Hello friends, I welcome you all here in this online lecture series where we are talking about the prescribed text from the syllabus of English. As on today we will be talking about one of the texts from paper number 9, Drama and Theatre. The title of this text is The Cocktail Party. It's actually a play written by T.S. Eliot, one of the greatest and influencing writers of the English literature. This playwright T.S. Eliot was born on 26th September 1888 in St. Louis, Missouri, USA. He was a poet, essayist, playwright, critic, publisher, philosopher, and many more roles that are being played by T.S. Eliot. He was honored with Nobel Prize in 1948. And the notable work that is worth countable is like this: The Song of James Alfred Prufrock, The Wasteland, Murder in the Cathedral, Four Quarters, and there are some other works of art too. And he was died on 4th January 1965 in London. Now we will be talking about the text The Cocktail Party. It's one of the notable and widely acclaimed works of T.S. Eliot. This play is based on Euripides' Alcestis with the author's, the playwright's autobiographical implications. It reflects his Christian beliefs and ideas on life and the philosophy. The play has the aspects of drawing room comedy and comedy of manners. It is a family drama, a domestic play, and it has also the psychological and psychiatric aspects. The play bears the tone of darker philosophical study of human relations. The story of Cocktail Party is composed in almost 3 acts, and there are several scenes. The characters from this play: Edward Chamberlain, he is a protagonist; Lavinia Chamberlain, Edward's wife; Celia Copplestone, Edward's mistress; Sir Henry Harcourt Raleigh, the mysterious stranger and a psychiatrist; Peter Quilpay, with whom Lavinia has an affair but he yearns for Celia; and Julia Suttlethwaite, Alexander Macaulay Gibbs. These are some of the important characters from. Now we will be talking about the first act of this play. Actually, the first act has 3 scenes. Instead of going through the scene wise, I would like to share with you the story of the first act in general. The first act of this play opens with a cocktail party, and this party is held by Lavinia Chamberlain in her flat located at London. However, she is absent from the party, and her husband Edward Chamberlain is there in that flat. At the 11th hour, when he comes to know that a party is being conducted by his wife, then he has telephoned to the people who have been invited for this party from a diary where he could get the address, names and telephones of the people. But still some of the invitees were gathered there in the flat of Edward Chamberlain, and now he has to tackle the circumstances because he was caught in such a condition where there was a complete bewilderment of Edward. He does not know the people he was quite strange with them, and they were quite mysterious to him. However, the conversation was started. The first scene, I mean, the initial part of this act was started, and from that initial part, we come to know that the guests are engaged or indulged in their chatting. They are narrating stories to each other. First of all, Julia was narrating a story to the guest, and she was narrating a story of Lady Clothes and wedding cake. In between, she raises a question about Lavinia's whereabouts. Then Edward reports to the people that all of a sudden Lavinia has to go to visit to her aunt because she was seriously ill, and it was her duty to attend on her aunt. Then by going ahead of it, on knowing that Lavinia is not present at the house, the guests, especially Julia, Peter, Celia, and Alex, are now leaving the flat of Edward, but still an unidentified guest is there with Edward. And from their conversation, it reveals that the actual name of this unidentified guest is Sir Henry Harcourt Raleigh, and he is a psychiatrist by profession. He has much interest in the married life of Edward, the way he is watching the things are turning up in the life of Edward. Harcourt becomes very interested to know what actually is there in the relationship of wife and husband, and that's why he is asking some questions. And now Edward is reporting on that 5 years have been passed after their marriage, and in that 5 years they have no children at all, but still they are stuck to their relationship of wife and husband. They are interested in their relationship, and they are not seeking any kind of option elsewhere. So this kind of the discussion was going on, and this discussion was being interrupted by a character named as Julia. She repetitively comes on the stage, and she interrupts to the conversation of these two. First of all, she was come to get her umbrella back. Later on, she comes with Peter, and on the second occasion, she was come to get her spectacle back. So after that, when Peter is there, before of that one, you see, Sir Harcourt really gives a promise to Edward when he was insisting that he wanted his wife back, that Harcourt will get his wife, Edward's wife Lavinia, back in next 24 hours. But for that sake, he has to agree with one of the conditions of Harcourt, and the condition is this: that on the arrival of Lavinia, Edward is not going to ask any kind of question to Lavinia's whereabouts. Edward agrees on this condition, and then Sir Harcourt really leaves the room, and when he leaves the room, then there is an entry of Peter. Peter was come there to express his feelings of heart, that he was in love with Celia, and he wanted some kind of assistance from Edward, because there was a little bit problem in the love relationship of Celia and Peter. So it was Edward who could help to Peter, and that's why he was searching help from Edward. When this kind of a discussion was going on, then there was an entry of one more character. Alex comes there, and Alex was come to invite Edward for the sake of having dinner together, but the invitation is declined by Edward. He does not like to go outside. He wanted to be alone there in his flat. He wanted to confine himself in his house, and he does not like to be there in the company of anybody else. That's why, being a best cook, Alex keeps something else there in the kitchen for the sake of cooking, as it will be served as dinner for Edward, and he leaves the stage. With this, the first scene of this act ends. The second scene started after 15 minutes. Now, the food that was left in the kitchen was completely spoiled, because after 10 minutes it would have been bitterly ripe, but the time is totally surpassed. Almost 15 years have been passed, and still the man Edward was completely heedless towards the food, and that's why the food was completely spoiled. In the second scene of the first act, we are watching two characters were there on the stage. The first one Edward, and the second one was Celia. And the location is same. These two are there in the flat of Edward, and from their conversation it reveals that these two are really in love with each other. There is a love relationship between Celia and Edward. Though at the earlier occasion Edward has denied his relationship with anybody else, but he was in love with Celia. And Peter was telling to Edward that Peter is in love with Celia, but actually Celia was not in love with Peter, but she was in love with Edward. So from their conversation it reveals that they are strongly in love with each other, but now Edward had a problem, and the problem is this, that his wife is primarily missed, and the second problem is this, that he does not know where she is gone to and when she is going to come back. So on this, actually Celia is very happy, because Lavinia seems to be an obstacle in the way of his love with Edward, and if she herself has gone out of the house, then this will be an opportunity for Celia and Edward to get together in the bond of marriage. But Edward was not of the same ideas or same thinking. He had different idea. He wanted his wife back, and that's why he was not liking that Celia should think like this. And on this matter he becomes very sad, unhappy on Celia. So after that he tells to Celia that we have to understand our limitations. We are subject to our fate and destiny. So it is our duty to stuck with our relationship, and not to cross any kind of relationship. Though he is in love with Celia, but he does not ignore that he is married man, and Lavinia Edward is his wife. So after that one, you see, Celia understands what Edward is trying to say to her, and then there was a reconciliation in between the lovers, and the second scene of the first act that ends with that note. The third scene of this act started on the second day at the time of afternoon, and Edward Chamberlain is there in his flat, and unidentified guest is come to visit to him. So Sir Harcourt has been there in the house of Edward for the sake of getting the information whether Edward had changed his decision or not. Edward says that he has not changed his decision, he wanted his wife back. So he announces that his wife will be back in next a few minutes, and by making this kind of announcement, Sir Harcourt really leaves the stage, and some other characters are entered on the stage, and these characters are Julia, Peter, Celia, and Alex, and they are reporting that they are uh, responding to the mails that they have received from someone. Uh, so after that, there is an entry of Lavinia Chamberlain, a 40s woman, a beautiful and gorgeous woman, appears on the stage, and she is surprised to see that people like Celia, Julia, Peter, Alex are there in her flat. So she is asking the reason because of that one they are there in her flat, and they are telling to her that they have been there while responding to the mails received by them. So Edward was thinking that it would be his wife Lavinia who might have been sent that mails to these people, but now it becomes clear that it was not Lavinia who has sent mails to them, but someone else, some unknown person have sent mails to them, and they were there in the flat of Edward Chamberlain. So after having the primary kind of the discussion or the chatting, the guests are now ready to leave the couple together, and Edward and Lavinia are now conversing with each other. Though earlier it was decided that Edward is not going to ask any kind of question to Lavinia about her whereabouts, but he is now wanting to know where his wife has gone to. And from their conversation, actually it was one kind of a quarrel dispute, and from their quarrel it becomes very clear that both the characters are quite contrary to each other, as they are in love and hate relationship, though they are in the bond of marriage, so quite obviously loving to each other, but with that they are also hating to each other. And then from this scene, third scene, we comes to know that the first act is ending on the note of the quarrel between the wife and husband. So the first act is ending not on the happy note, but one kind of the sad note. Wife and husband are disputing, they are quarreling. Okay. Now we will be talking about the second act. The second act opens in a consulting room of the psychiatrist, Sir Henry Harcourt Raleigh, and he is treating to wife and husband, Lavinia and Edward, separately, and with them there is one more patient that he has to deal with. When Sir Harcourt Raleigh was treating to wife and husband, he comes to know that though these two are married with each other, but their interests are lying in somewhere else. I mean to say that Lavinia Chamberlain was loving to Peter, and Edward Chamberlain was loving to Celia. Secretly, there was a secret kind of extramarital relationship. Both of the wife and husband were bearing with them, and he advises them that now they have to sacrifice their relationship, I mean to say that extramarital relationship, and try to get much more interest in their wife and husband relationship. And with that, when Sir Harcourt really was treating to the third patient, it was Celia, and it was she who has made the relationship of one husband completely disturbed. She was the main enticing point or enticing object, attracting object for the sake of this relationship. Edward was completely hallucinated by the love of the lady Celia. And now the doctor, I mean Sir Henry Harcourt, was advising to the lady that she has to sacrifice her interest in Edward Chamberlain, and she has to accept her own way of life. It is not her duty or it is not her right to interrupt or to become an obstacle in the way of the married couple. So it was decided in the second act that Celia has to accept her own way of life. Peter has to accept her own way of life. And Edward and Lavinia have to accept their own life of marriage. After that second act, in the third act, we are watching once again a cocktail party is being conducted in Chamberlain's house, and this act is taking place after 2 years since the second act was ended. Edward and Lavinia are very happy and they are together. They are extending their hands in the business of each other as they are preparing for the party. So both of them are helping with each other and they are quite happy, satisfied, enthusiastic, interested in each other. So this kind of a scene, a sudden change is there in the relationship of wife and husband. What kind of the advice was given by Sir Henry? That advice is now working out, as we can say here. Then by going ahead in this act, we see that now the guests are joining to the party. So Julia, Alexander, I mean Alex and Peter are come to enjoy the party. And Peter is informing to the guests, I mean to say that the characters, that by the time he has become a successful Hollywood writer, before of 2 years, he had decided to enter in the field of film industry because he had interest in writing stories. So he had decided to go there, and now by the time he has become a successful Hollywood writer. And with this good news, Peter had one more news, and this news is about Celia. Likewise, Celia has also decided to accept her own way of life, and she was accepted. She had gone on a mission to a remote island, and he was gone there as a nurse. And by going there, she was treating two plague-stricken natives of that island. The natives of that island were plague-stricken; they were suffered from the plague, and he was working as the nurse. So while working as the nurse, unfortunately, she caught in an incident where she was killed by the native people. So Celia is being killed by the natives on that remote island, and this kind of a sad news is given by Peter to the rest of the characters. On listening this kind of a news, all of them were shocked. They were taken aback, but Sir Harcourt Raleigh, who by the time joins to them, explains the matter like this way that though Celia is being killed, but it is not a waste of her life, but she has sacrificed her life for a noble cause. And people, I mean to say that characters who were present there should not feel sorry on the death of Celia, but they should feel proud about Celia, that she has sacrificed her life for the sake of the native people of that island, and she has become a martyr. She appears as a martyr. Finally, it shows that the characters of this play have found their own way of life. They have got a solution on their problems. And the play is ending with everyone seeming to be exactly where they belong. Wife and husband were belonging to the relationship of wife and husband. So they found their place. That conjugal relationship has to be carried out, and they stuck with it. Celia and Peter, they were not supposed to disturb the conjugal relationship of Edward and Lavinia, so they accepted their own way of life, of serving people, serving humanity, where the one Peter has become very successful. Second, Celia has also become successful, but unfortunately, she has sacrificed her life. At the end of this presentation, I would like to focus on the conclusion part of the play. The play might be analyzed as a solstice in the drawing room, because basically the play, the cocktail party, is based on Euripides' Solstice. It talks about a wife who has sacrificed her life for the sake of her husband, only to be recalled from the dead, and for husband and wife to be reunited. Solstice in the drawing room. ड्रॉइंग रूम मध्ये एक स्त्री, एक पत्नी आपल्या पतीसाठी म्हणून आपला बळी देते, जेणेकरून पुन्हा एकदा आपल्या पतीसाठी तिला पुनर्जन्म स्वीकारायचा आहे. आणि या नाटकामध्ये असलेली जी काही बायोग्राफिकल इम्प्लिकेशन आहे ती अशा पद्धतीची आहे. T.S. Eliot was married firstly with Vivienne, but in 1947 this first wife of T.S. Eliot was died in confinement, and she was died simply because T.S. Eliot had a close friend, Martini Emily Hell, with whom he could marry. Eliot could marry. The first wife of T.S. Eliot was sacrificed herself. For the sake her husband T.S. Eliot could marry with his close friend Martini Emily Hell. So this kind of the biographical implication is here in the story of the cocktail party. So this is a beautiful story of the play. The cocktail party ends, and I stop over here. I extend my feelings of gratitude that you listened very patiently. Thanks a lot.